Hello, everyone. Today, we are talking about food security, not in some country around the globe, but right here in our region in Minnesota. Tens of thousands of Minnesotans have lost their jobs as a result of COVID-19, and that's making it much more difficult for families to put food on the table. In fact, by Labor Day, as many as 1 in every 8 Minnesotans is likely to experience food insecurity unless something changes. And that is a startling and unacceptable possibility. So today, we're talking with a group of leaders in our community who are collaborating to meet the food security challenge head on. We're joined by Allison O'Toole, the CEO of Second Harvest Heartland, Dimitrios Smyrnios, the CEO of the Schwans company, and David Fiocco, a partner at McKinsey Co. So thanks to each of you for joining me today and sharing your insights about the food insecurity challenges before us and the actions that are needed right now to respond. It's great to see you.
Great to see all of you. Great to be with you.
Nice seeing everybody.
Thanks for having us.
Well, Allison, let's start with you. As the largest food bank, the second largest food bank in the United States, can you speak to us about the needs that you're currently seeing from families in Minnesota and how those needs are changing under COVID and how maybe this moment feels different from, a typical year?
Yeah, I'm happy to, and thanks for having me, Peter. It is just an honor to be talking with the three of you and about this important topic. We're seeing levels of food insecurity that we have not seen since the Great Depression in Minnesota. You mentioned in your opening, Peter, 1 in 8 Minnesotans by August is not going to know where their next meal is coming from. And let me tell you what that means to families. That means families are watering down milk. That means moms are skipping dinner so their kids can have a little more. That means kids, when school starts again, whether it be online or in person, that means they're learning on an empty stomach. And we know that hungry kids can't learn. And so we are really in a crisis. What I always think the best thing you can do when you have a problem facing you, like very close, is to get the information you need to get through it and to get a plan in place. And that's what we've done. This is a beautiful example of our community coming together, all sectors. And, Schwans has been an amazing partner to Second Harvest Heartland for a long time, as has McKinsey. And McKinsey, for sure, in the last several months since this crisis started, has been right by our side, looking at this problem from every angle. And let me give you a couple statistics that I just looked up this morning. We're tracking this very closely compared to, volume from last year. So if you think about, and David will go more into this, but you think about 1 in 8 Minnesotans facing this food insecurity, that's people we know. That has never been closer to us. That's our colleagues, our friends, our families. And so when you think about getting through it, talking about it and making it okay to ask for help is one of the biggest things we can do. We also need the financial resources and all of that as well, which is a big part of this. But in the last month, in the last 4 months, we have had about a 30% increase in our volume. When you look at it over time, in the last month, it is almost 70%. And so, David, I feel like that is like the best segue to you to talk about the data, because we are tracking this data is our key to helping this community through this crisis. And it has given us the data we need to plan, to get the food, to work with our partners so we can actually serve the people, make sure that we're healthy at the end of this and that we can thrive again. But we are tracking, and right now in this last month, we're seeing a 70% increase over last year, which is just mind-blowing and overwhelming.
That's a call to action if we've ever heard one. So David, to that point, McKinsey was directly involved with developing models that project how the need for food assistance in Minnesota will be impacted by a variety of factors in the months ahead. What can you tell us about those factors driving food insecurity, and maybe how long can we expect those elevated rates of food insecurity to last?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think when the pandemic started, at least I had the perception that the worst was what was happening right then, as we were seeing the economy shut down, and we were seeing, dramatic pictures of people, in lines at food shelters and relief agencies. It turned out, that was really just the beginning. So, in February, Minnesota unemployment was right around 3%. Last month, it was hovering at 10%. And, many of our projections show that that number will actually continue to rise, particularly if there's a resurgence in the virus that we see, here and in other parts of the country. Some families had safety nets that lasted a little bit of time, and there were state and federal stimulus dollars that really helped to provide a near-term bridge. Most of those programs, relief programs, are already tapering off and ending. And that's why the months ahead are actually scarier than looking backwards. So now the problem becomes even more acute. The dollars are gone, unemployment is still in place, uncertainty grows, and family safety nets are gone. So as Allison said, our model projected a 70% increase required in food relief for the rest of this year. And I think we were hopeful that those numbers were conservative, and it's turning out that, that is really what demand is looking like. And then, Peter, to your question of, so how long? Originally, we had a recovery scenario that had us getting back to normal towards the end of this year. As we continue to connect with public and private sector economists across the state and the country, that scenario is gone. So most of our scenarios now show that recovery will take through the end of 2021 for jobs and unemployment levels to be back where they were in February. And so the reality is the relief that we need is not a Band-Aid, but we really do need to be thinking about 18-month solutions to solve both the, that 70% increase in volume, and then the supply chain and support resources that are required to deliver that aid, both to all corners of the state and to all communities in the metro.
So this is an all-in moment. And Dimitrios, I know this is an issue that's of great concern to you and Schwans, and has been for years. I mean, can you share your perspective on the greatest areas of impact and the role that Schwans is playing to address this?
Yeah, first, Peter, thanks for pulling us together on this extremely important topic, as we have all said, and it's a pleasure to join David and also Allison. I can tell you, as you know, Schwans is a food company. So we're very, very passionate about the role that we play as a company, as a foundation, as people, as employees in fighting hunger, because we know, as Allison and David are saying, this is an issue that is impacting everybody. We have a long-standing relationship for many years with Feeding America, and we work very closely with Allison and Second Harvest and other regional food banks where they're real close to our communities, that we have plants. And we will continue to do so. So fighting hunger is not just new for us because of COVID-19. It's been that way and a big focus for us for a long time. And, during this time, I think Allison said it very well. It's hard for kids to learn. It's hard for adults to focus if their stomach says and their brain says that they're hungry. Clearly, the economic impact of COVID-19 in this country has escalated that and continues to escalate it. And as David said, we don't see this solving itself in the next month or two. It's going to be here for a while. Hopefully, we can solve it quicker, but we can't plan on that. So when we talk about hunger relief, we know that most impacted sometimes are families with kids. And we try to tailor our programs and our support both from a food standpoint and a money donation standpoint to kids. We do this in many different ways. One, through food banks, donation to different food banks like we know here, Second Harvest. And we also spend some time thinking through the impact that kids that are not in school are having, because kids right now, their last meal could be Friday lunchtime, and they don't have food to eat for Saturday and Sunday or till they get back to school on Monday. That isn't a food insecurity. It's sad, but it's real. So what we're doing is focusing on backpack programs in the communities where we have our plants, where a kid will leave with a backpack full of food that they can eat through the weekend till they get back to school. This is something we've been doing a long time, and we've increased the support in the communities that clearly need it. We have some plants in the communities where families definitely need some of our support. On the other hand, I will also tell you that one of our executives, Stacey Fowler, is part of the board with Allison, and this keeps it top of mind because as Stacey gives us updates as an executive team and as an organization on what Allison and her team are doing, it doesn't allow you to slip into out of sight, out of mind. So Stacey does a great job of making sure we understand exactly what's happening right here in Minnesota, and that we participate in the support that obviously Second Harvest is having across Minneapolis and across the area. So for us, it's important. It's an obligation for businesses to support the communities that support them. And that is not going to change even after COVID. It's something we're proud of.
We'll talk more about that in a second. So, I mean, it's not going to solve itself. Allison, I understand the state of Minnesota is leading a private-public effort to shape the state's response to the situation. And it seems like a time when that collaboration is more important than ever. What can you tell us about what's underway?
I am so proud to be a Minnesotan right now because of the way people are coming together. And David's heard me say that a million times, so I make him smile sometimes. But it, I'm in near constant contact with the Walls administration multiple times a week. And I know David and I have been together on calls where we are thinking ahead about how the entire hunger relief network will function together and be supported, but how our entire community really can band together to do that. One of the, so I brief them daily. I will see the governor this afternoon, in fact, but we also brief the federal delegation too, because there are really important levers like the SNAP program that, when I think about our mission to end hunger together and ending hunger, and now we're in a crisis situation, SNAP is the closest thing to a silver bullet that we have to end hunger in our communities. And so every other crisis, the federal government has stepped up and given extra benefits at times like this. They're doing that a little bit right now. I ask for everyone's advocacy on that. It has gotten politicized, which I despise, but is so important. But back to our great state, David and I have, one of the key things, not only do we need the resources, and that's a partnership. I always think that we have individuals, we have just had amazing generosity from this community, individuals, corporations, foundations, and the government. And it takes all of us to do that. So we need continued resources from all of those areas. But we're also talking through supply chain issues with the state right now. And those are some of the most important things we're going to be facing in the next few months. And there's a lot of pressure on supply chains right now. Some of the things that we need the most are in super high demand, pasta and rice and cereal, and getting access to those supply chains directly will be really important to us moving forward. And that's something a little unique. And I don't know, David, if you want to expand on that, but that is one, coming together to solve. We need everyone to come together to solve that. We need the private sector. We need creative minds from every sector, and just a willingness to have the conversation to see what solutions we can come up with. But that's one of the biggest areas. And David, you do that at a way more detailed and sophisticated level than I do. I know.
I think what's been really impressive is everyone wants to help. And Allison, you said it well. I'm proud of the state's response. I'm proud of the corporations in the state. I'm proud of the individual generosity we're seeing. I think the reality is, though, it's not always easy to know how and where to help. And so this is where this work that's happening now is really important. Data is our friend, and the more we can use data and analytics to understand real time both how the need is evolving and where the need is evolving will help us to get in front of the response. And I think it's good to remember it's both food, but then getting that food and distributing it all the way to hungry Minnesotans wherever they are in the state. And so, getting the right mix of fresh and packaged foods, healthy and sustainable food options that we can distribute. And I actually think, Schwans and other corporate partners have been so wonderfully generous in making that food available in all kinds of ways. And then from a supply chain perspective, the distribution points from a food relief perspective were not designed for the volume of need that we're seeing. And the supply chains to get them there were not designed to surge 70% in a couple of month period. So how do we really work together to both get in front of where that need will be, and then to understand the cold chain needs, the distribution point needs, even with social distancing, where that distribution can happen, what the volunteer workforce to help make that happen will be. I am so encouraged by the way the state and Second Harvest are forming the anchor partnerships of, both the capacity to relieve and the data and insights to know where and how to help. I think, if you think about the amount of time that we expect this to be a challenge, we're really just getting started. And there's a lot of work to come to ramp up the way we analyze and share that data and the kinds of partnerships that we have in the state to bring everybody together to respond at the right time in the right place.
So it's a fluid situation, and what I hear you saying, I think this is an important takeaway, that it's dynamic. So the need fluctuates, and the need isn't uniform. It can be highly specific geographically, and so we have to have a more sophisticated understanding of how to intervene effectively. I'm wondering, is there some possible good that could come out of this moment? If we get more sophisticated about how to tackle this challenge. Unfortunately, we had a major hunger issue in this state before COVID-19. Is it possible we could come out of this crisis and be better at addressing this issue than we were before? Allison?
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, David.
I hope so. I've had the privilege of watching Allison's team build the capability to respond, build the analytical horsepower. Her supply chain team has just moved so far from being responsive to proactive in the best possible ways. I think we can continue. The reality is the world is increasingly volatile, and whether it's a weather or an economic or a social challenge, we will see these challenges happen. And the better we are at using, understanding, and sharing the information and bringing together the information that's being collected all over the state in different ways, I think the better we can be at meeting the need and reducing that number that's going to bed hungry or not knowing where their next meal is coming from. So I do think, in some ways it's sad that this capability is so important, but the capability will continue to be important, and it's an investment worth making.
So maybe to that point as well about what happens going forward, Dimitrios, you talked about why Schwans is invested in this issue and has been for a long time, and what you're doing now. Pulling back a little bit to think about the business community more broadly, I think we have some muscle memory in this region and state to look to the business community for solutions. How do you see the broader business community responding to this challenge in this moment? And then, is there something going forward, for the broader business community to be thinking about how to stay engaged in this issue?
It's a great question. I appreciate the question, Peter. Here's the thing. I have this philosophy that says you have to support the families and the communities that support you. And some families in some communities have need, but others families are supporting me, and that's why I'm in business. They're buying my product, and I have to give back to those communities. So what we do at Schwans, we look at everywhere we have a corporate or a regional office, everywhere we have a plant, and we say, okay, what are the needs? What are the needs in this community? How can we identify the hunger needs that are local? And then make sure, if it's kids or families or seniors, it really doesn't matter. Make sure we affiliate ourselves with a good partner. And for us, it's been Feeding America, and we have a lot of trust and a lot of good relationships across the United States and the communities as a business that we do business in. And I can't really say enough good things about Feeding Americans. And look, Allison with Second Harvest has done a phenomenal job. So we partner with what we think are real committed affiliates in the communities that we do business, and do this in good times or in challenging times like COVID, because it's extremely important that the affiliates have regular support. As Allison will tell you, it can't be a peak and valley approach. Like every business out there, we like consistent support, and that's what's extremely important with the affiliates that we have decided to partner with. So clearly, when you look, as David mentioned, in the food banks across the U.S. and in Minnesota, they all need help. They need help from a food standpoint, but they also need help from a facilities, from a network, from a logistics and a distribution standpoint. A great example is for the people that have gone to the new distribution center in Brooklyn Park. I mean, this is a business. Yes, it's support. It needs support, but logistical help, network help, and that's where our people can give their time and make sure that there's good partnership in what we're trying to do. And I think all businesses can decide who are the affiliates that are important on this topic of hunger, how do they connect where they have local facilities, if it's a plant or a regional office, partner with those facilities and apply the expertise that as businesses we have on moving product, specifically food, to overcome some of the challenges that some of the food banks have from a logistics standpoint, from an inventory standpoint, from a building distribution standpoint. So it's really interconnected for us at Schwans, and I think it can be interconnected for all businesses, regardless where you have your regional office or your distribution center or a manufacturing facility.
That's tangible, and that's something that not just food companies, but every company can take to heart. Right. So as we kind of conclude, we think back to where we started. This isn't a 24-month issue. This is a 60-day issue. This is a 90-day issue. This is right in front of us right now. Dimitrios, what gives you hope that we're going to be able to meet this moment in the way we need to?
Well, I'm new to Minnesota, and I can tell you that from my perspective, I am blown away, and this is my 19th relocation. So I look at this place and I say to myself, wow, the business community leaders, the community, the people that are in service for our government all come together to support causes, and hunger clearly is a cause. So I've been extremely impressed with the commitment that a lot of you personally in your organizations have as a newcomer to Minnesota. And I have a lot of hope. I do believe most of us look at this glass as half full, even though there's a crisis. And the question for all of us is, looking in the mirror, what can we do? How can I give my minutes and my dollars to support a hunger crisis that we're experiencing, and as my counterparts here said, is going to stick around. So I'm very positive on the outcome of this if we all are top of mind and we all give our minutes and our time and our dollars to support this cause.
Well, let's drill into that question to end. What can we do? Allison and David, give us, the folks who are watching this, a lot of people are going to see this. They're going to be motivated to respond. We're going to attach some of the information and data so they can read up on this. What can people do this week and next week to support these efforts?
David, you want to go first, or you want me to go?
Help Allison. I think Second Harvest is really at the center of the response. It's important to recognize it's not a one-time one-time ask and a one-time need. So I'd say give what you can. Dimitrios said it well. Your time and your resources now, but please continue to stay engaged and to look for updates and to understand as the situation evolves, because the help will be just as critical as we get through the summer and into the fall.
Okay, Allison, what are the action steps?
Well, we need help more than we ever have before, and I am immensely moved by the generosity of this community. I always think there's so much we can't control in a crisis, but what we can control is not only the information we have at our fingertips, and thanks to all of our partners, primarily David and his team, but we can also control how we step up as a community to support one another. And financial resources are key. We can stretch a dollar like nobody's business. We turn a dollar into 3 meals, and that is leverage that individuals don't have at the grocery store themselves, what we do as a large food bank. I also think using, we are committed to being as creative as we can to meet this new demand and to adjust our delivery and distribution methods to meet the needs. We've got winter coming. We're doing a lot of drive-through and drive-up right now, and so we're thinking through what the winter means for us. And so bringing all those minds together, advocate for SNAP. I can't say it enough. And finally, I think we have so many new faces showing up in need of help. People who have never had to navigate the hunger relief system, signing up for SNAP, and getting help. And so let's make it okay for them to do that. I think asking for help shows that you trust your neighbors and trust your community. And we need everyone to make it okay for anyone who needs it to ask for help. We stand by this community, all of you, and the larger community in getting through this and making sure we thrive at the end of this when we see hopefully some better days coming. But we need everyone to pitch in, dig a little deeper, and we will get through this. I have total faith in this community that we will do that.
Well, thank you for that. That's a great place for us to land. Thanks to each of you for what you're doing and all the time and energy and resources you're investing in solving this critically important problem for our community. And this is something we can solve. So let's do it.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for having us.